don't need to tell any of you that the time in which we are living is a time of deep overwhelm for so many. It affects the generations from the youngest among us to our elders, who, if they are fortunate enough to be able to retire, are busier than ever in retirement. My father retired years ago and then took on side jobs, teaching and mentoring teachers, and then he served on my hometown's Board of Education for 10 years. He was 82 when he stopped retirement working, as I called it, and when his final Board of Education term was up. Regardless, all the while he identified as retired. He understood himself as retired. It wasn't until relatively recently that I realized that actually I can't do all the things I want to do. All the interesting things that capture my curiosity, all the important causes that call to my sense of justice, all the fun things that I know that I would enjoy. I used to be able to do all of those things, to say yes over and over again with nary a care. I understand time differently now. I experience time differently now. It turns out that time is finite. Turns out there really are only 24 hours in a day. And it turns out I must consider carefully how I use my time, and so must all of you. And on this first Sunday of a year of Sundays that we will share, I want to now affirm your choice to make your way to All Souls in the midst of the many responsibilities and passions and interests that make up your lives, your everyday. At the end of the week, I know that Sunday morning is a precious envelope of time, that you understand, that you know in your hearts, that to make your way to All Souls is a form of Sabbath that strengthens and lifts up, and that this is, in fact, countercultural. That you join your voice, your compassion, your money, and yes, your service with others is, yes, countercultural. That said, in this past most difficult year, haven't we all witnessed an increase of community mindfulness? The Souls at All Souls have a bit of a jump on that trend as we have practiced community-mindedness as well as welcoming and caring at the core of our mission for 111 years on January 10th. So thank you all for your commitment to Sabbath, one that offers more peace in our hearts and your hearts and homes and neighborhoods and hopefully in our country. And yes, I think to the world. I am grateful for your commitment to your own spiritual care and that of the communities of which you are a part. So your lives are full, and there's no doubt that part of that fullness is taken up with service. So I want to take an informal poll so you see for yourselves. I invite you to raise your hand if you serve your community in any capacity, as in your parent-teacher organization, on the Board of Education, on the representative town committee, some committee in your community that strives to make life better for everyone. Raise your hand if you're a part of that. Raise high. Okay. I invite you to raise your hand if you serve some greater cause in the company of others who are working for a more just and welcoming society. So the ACLU People Power Action Together, Rise Up Mystic, the War Resisters League, Fresh New London, Out Connecticut. If you are part of something like that, raise your hand. Thank you for your service. I invite you to raise your hand if you serve others directly by volunteering for organizations such as Start Fresh, the Homeless Hospitality Center, Safe Futures, one of our local prisons, a literacy volunteer, or a mentor. Raise your hand if that is you. Thank you for your service. And I invite you to raise your hand if you offer your time and talent here at All Souls to help keep All Souls vibrant and going. Raise your hand. Thank you for your service. And I invite you to raise your hand if you have had a yearning to do more than you are able to do for your community and for the world. Raise your hand. Yeah. So let's say this together. I am one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Can I get an amen? Amen. Amen. We cannot do everything. And yet many of us have determined that we will do more than we otherwise might out of a sense of urgency in this time. Next week, I'll be sharing Reverend Dr. King's attitudes towards service, in particular, what he had to say about burnout. So I'm going to give you just a little sneak preview. He described burnout as, and this is his quote, surrender to the worst sides of ourselves. Isn't that interesting? But today, we're talking about joy in service. Here's the truth. Joy in service is the way we stay clear of burnout in service. Dear souls, joy, joy, joy. I grew up with a mother who found joy in the most mundane tasks. I've shared this before. She would say ridiculously, some would say ridiculously so, as in, come to ShopRite with me, it'll be fun. But you know what? It was fun. And to this day, I love grocery shopping. And sometimes I wonder if those fun trips to ShopRite had anything to do with that. But we've got to find joy, and therefore fun in all of it, from the mundane chores that keep our homes places of respite and peace, to the service that supports those who live on the margins or that rights the wrongs that force people to those margins. Of the mundane tasks, Thich Nhat Hanh, the inspiring Buddhist monk, says the following about washing dishes. He wrote, there are two ways to wash the dishes. The first is to wash the dishes in order to have clean dishes. And the second is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes. If while washing the dishes we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us, thus hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they were a nuisance, then we are not washing the dishes to wash the dishes. What's more, we are not alive during the time we are washing the dishes. In fact, we are completely incapable of realizing the miracle of life while standing at the sink. If we can't wash the dishes, the chances are we won't be able to drink tea either. While drinking the cup of tea, we will only be thinking of other things, barely aware of the cup in our hands. Thus, we are sucked away into the future, and we are incapable of actually living 1 minute of life. So ends his wisdom. We don't have a dishwasher at our house. And so I think of Thich Nhat Hanh every time I put my hands to the task. Purpose, connection to self and others, these are at the heart of joyful service. There are 300 potential helpers at All Souls, and to each of you I say that in whatever way you choose to give to the work of All Souls, as we say every week, it should be a source of joy for you, a source of fun, of learning, a source of expansion, the expansion of your spirit, of your understanding, of your knowing of others, and your compassion and knowing yourself. You've got too much to do for it to be otherwise. And besides, if you're not having fun, there's a very good chance that no one around you is having fun either. In 2 weeks, we are premiering a most inspiring video about the work of All Souls and the people who do the work that is often, in the words of the poets, common as mud. Karen Jones and Teresa Reynolds have been working on a program called Growth Through Service. Perhaps you remember hearing about it, and you will see more about it in 2 weeks. It is so good. Here's who I saw this past week quietly doing the work here at All Souls. Lori Blayfeld, in her weekly stop to water all the plants, and in the weeks after the holiday, rearranging the poinsettias that grace our chancel. Carol Bunting, in her weekly stop to straighten Unity Hall. Janet Marolda and Katrina Berghow down in the basement. I bet you didn't even know that there was a basement. Clearing out the stuff that no one has needed or used in a generation, nor will ever need or use again. The stewardship team met on the eve of the storm, our consultant with us from afar, and through that storm, I worked with 18 souls in different capacities by email, text, Zoom, and by phone. The work, common as mud, and all of it so important. Does all of it get us to a place much, much, much higher than heaven as it did the rabbi? Call me by my mother's name, but I say yes. Yes, these are the quiet tasks. Nothing flashy, nothing earth-shattering, but all of it brings us closer together. All of it brings flashes of laughter, sometimes pissiness. Always we're better for doing the work together. And I'll end with a story. Since last January, I have been working with the ACLU People Power folks on immigration justice, and we're nearly to the finish line of proposing new ordinances to New London's mayor and then the city council that will provide a modicum of protection and safety to all of our neighbors here in our city. And at the conclusion of this meeting, I looked around the table and I felt such gratitude for the opportunity to serve with these fine people who are all new friends of mine. And so I told them how grateful I am, that however awful these times may be, these times also brought me in close proximity to people I never would have known otherwise. That's the joy in deeply difficult times, that we are not alone in the work. Service reminds us that we are not alone over and over again. In the big and in the small things, we are not alone. So let us, friends, blaze paths deep, deep, deep into the woods of our hearts and souls and find there always a little slice of heaven. Blessed be and amen. Amen. Let us enter into a communion of silence to consider deeply the question, the fact, the task of service.